everybody, I hope you enjoyed my other two videos for XCOM the board game, my tutorial, my sample gameplay videos. I'm going to go ahead and give you my final thoughts of the game, but before I do, in case you missed those other two videos, I'm going to insert a really quick clip here which gives you a quick overview of exactly how XCOM the board game plays. If you want to bypass it, scroll right down the YouTube comments all the way to the timestamp, and I'll start my full review. XCOM the board game is a game in which the predecessor to HAL 9000 asks you a very simple question. And War Games is probably the best reference to make when trying to describe how to play XCOM the board game versus the classic PC game of squad-based warfare. Because in XCOM the board game, you're acting globally. Each player is having to make decisions on a global scale. Basically, each player is representing one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that has to make decisions that's going to affect humanity on the global scale versus on the squad-based level, which is how the original XCOM was really meant to be played. And the HAL 9000 reference is probably perfect because this app wants to exterminate you with much prejudice by sending UFOs down from orbit. UFOs across the continents. They're going to send you Crisis. It's going to put enemies inside your base. More Crisis. Oh, and it just wants to see you completely exterminated. To play XCOM the board game, each player is going to have to take one of the roles for the game. And if you're playing with less than 4 players, that does mean that some players are going to have to double up on some of the roles they're taking. One player is going to control the squad leader who's going to handle all the aliens that are slowly working their way inside the base. They're going to handle the eventual way to actually win the game. And they're also going to have to send all their units out on missions to try to advance the goals of humanity without having the base completely conquered. Because if the base is completely conquered, the humanity has lost and the aliens have taken over and wiped out all of humanity. The chief scientist is responsible for researching technologies which are going to give humanity extra abilities in their grand fight versus these alien invaders. The more technology the chief scientist can research, the more abilities the other players are going to gain, giving you extra chances to possibly win this game. The commander is going to be in charge of global defense because these UFOs are going to start landing all over the entire world on various continents, and the only way you can stop them is by sending out your XCOM interceptors to try to blow these UFOs out of the water before they completely raise the panic levels. Because the panic levels is the second way you can lose this game. If two continents ever reach the orange level of panic, the populace has lost faith in XCOM's ability to handle a threat and you have lost the game. The commander is also responsible for handling random crises that are going to pop up throughout the game where players are going to have to make very tough decisions between worse or very much even more worse and figure out which ones they're going to handle while you're trying to juggle a budget. Because if you happen to go over budget, things are going to get very bad for the XCOM unit. And then finally, the central officer has two very important roles. They're in charge of the satellites that they can use to handle global communications, which can also help them move some of these UFOs to other places to better handle the situations caused by these UFOs invading planet Earth. On top of that, you're also responsible for running the app, which is doing its best to make you run out of time so you lose the game. If the players can manage to unlock the final mission before HAL 9000 manages to blow them out of the water, they're going to win the game. If they can't, humanity's last stand is lost and all players have lost. Hey everybody, before we get anywhere, let's just get one thing out of the way here. The game does require an application to play. Without the application, you can't play the game at all. And while some people argue that they could have made some form of mechanics using card draws, sand timers, and everything like that to replace the application, the simple fact that, yeah, they probably could have done that, but it would have been extremely unelegant. It would have been a pain in the neck, and it probably would not have been worth all the effort you would have to gone through just to get the application on the game. So yeah, the game does require an application. You can't play it without the application, and that's causing a lot of heartburn for some people, and I'm hoping I can set some of those fears aside for you just by going over a couple really quick facts. First of all, the game is available as a download from FFG's website that you can install on your PC or a thumb drive, ensuring that as long as you have that PC or that thumb drive, no matter what happens, as long as the hardware is functioning, you are going to have access to that program forever and ever. The other thing people are concerned about is that the program may be pulled from the marketplace. Another thing I want to let you know that you really don't have to worry about it, because even if an application is pulled from the marketplace, it's still attached to your account. Well, what does that mean? Well, a perfect example is a few years ago, a guy decided to make an unauthorized version of the Seven Wonders card game, and he decided to design an app for the game. Well, of course, Asmodee didn't like that because they didn't get their permission, and it's understandable, so they had the application pulled from the marketplace. Well, here's the trick. Since the application is actually tied to your account, that means you own the application forever as long as you have an account with the company. And I don't know if this is the same for Apple, but this is definitely how the Android marketplace works. As long as I own the application tied to my account, which means as long as I have an account, I am always going to have access to this application. Now, you can't get it because it's not available in the marketplace, but forever and ever, it's tied to my account, so I always have access to it. So what's the point of this? The point is that as long as you own the application, as long as it's tied to your account, it's never, ever going anywhere. Second concern is that people may have is that they feel that the application won't work on older operating systems. This is a Samsung Galaxy S3. You can buy these dirt cheap these days, unlocked or anything like that. You get them for $50 or less because they're about 2 to 3 years old now. Older technology doesn't even run the current version of the Android operating system. It's at 5.0. Not going to get into technicalities for you, but this is running 4.2. I can simply hit the button. The game loads just fine. This is an Asus Transformer. It's also 2 years old, running 4.21. Plays the game perfectly fine. No problems at all. Older technology. The game works just fine. Let's get one other thing out of the way here too. This is definitely more of a macro game versus a micro game. This is the movie War Games from the 1980s where everybody's sitting in a large command center. You have some official chiefs of staff. They're barking out orders at all their subordinates who need to go out there and get their orders taken care of across the global scale. This is not a skirmish level game where you're going to be controlling miniatures across the board, which is really the heart of what the original XCOM video game is, and that may also disappoint some players, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. I'm sure 2015 Gen Con is going to see the announcement from Fantasy Flight Games for XCOM, the board game, Squad Tactics, which is going to be a squad level game run by an app where players are going to put some decisions into an app on a global scale, and then the game's going to spit out a random map based on those decisions controlled by an overlord who's going to set the minions up across the board, the aliens, and the players are going to have to explore a war zone of some kind, opening doors. And the cool thing is the app's going to allow them to not have the miniatures on the board in advance, giving the overlord kind of a surprise factor that we've all been missing for our dungeon crawls. And of course, it's going to use the Descent 4.0 rules. Well, at least that's my guess. And I tell you what, if they do it, they do have my money. What FFG has created here is a very social experience. This is a social kind of game where most of your enjoyment is going to come from how much you're enjoying the interaction with your fellow board game players. Much in the same way that games such as Dead of Winter, The Resistance, and even One Night Ultimate Werewolf, where the gameplay itself is actually pretty simple, but it's creating a group narrative for your whole play group to enjoy. I mean, let's face it, this game is not very complex, and it's not trying to be complex because complexity would interfere with the social enjoyment. This is basically a game that's basically you're taking dice, you're rolling them, and you're pushing your luck while HAL 9000 is doing its best to make your life as miserable as possible. It's going to be throwing things at you. It's going to be throwing UFOs at you. It's going to be telling you things are blowing up, things are disappearing off your board, and you're having problems. It's going to tell you you don't have enough money to do what you need to do. The game itself is trying to create a panic level, not giving you enough time to make a lot of decisions, and that's all going to be the crux of the game. If you can enjoy a game that's full of panic, enjoy the social experience, and you're not that bummed out about the fact that the game mechanics themselves are not that complex, you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun with XCOM, the board game. The app itself, like the board game, is also kept pretty simple, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Simplicity also leads to elegance, which is very, very nice, and again allows the social experience of the game to come to the forefront versus fighting the mechanics of the game, which is what would have happened if they would have tried to design this game without the application itself. Sure, they could have made some very complex mechanics with card draws, with sand timers where you're building multiple decks, trying to get things done depending on various panic levels. They could have said things like your budget is based on X times how many red, X times how many yellow, times whatever number to figure out your budget, with some kind of D6 or something like that as a randomizer. Sure, they could have done everything like that to make the game completely without the application. But by the time you've got that done, you've gone from a 45-minute to an hour game to a 2-hour game that has a lot of extra frustration built in on top of a game that is not designed to be a frustrating, deep strategy game. This, again, is a panic game with a social experience where you're all fighting on a timer, yelling at each other, but having a heck of a lot of fun while you're yelling at each other, while you're all trying to avoid getting defeated by an app that is out for blood, worse than a Dalek crossed with a honey badger. If your game group can get into the theme and the panic that this game is trying to induce upon your play group, you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun with this game. But if your group cannot get into the theme, cannot get into panic, you're going to realize just how shallow this game is, because overall it is a very simple game. It's a very simple push your luck mechanic kind of game that's going to have a die that's reminiscent of Dead of Winter, except this die hates you even more because it's a 1 in 8, a 2 in 8, a 3 in 8, or even a 5 in 8 of killing you no matter how well you plan. Unlike Dead of Winter, which was only a 1 in 12 chance, this is a sliding scale that's going to hate you more and more and more and more as you play it. And no matter how good your strategies are, no matter how good your plan is, no matter how much you can outsmart HAL 9000 and his timer of doom, there's nothing you can do that's going to stop the bad luck of the dice and just how random that die is going to be. One bad roll of the die can cause you to lose thousands of dollars or thousands of credits or however you want to call them versus your spaceships. It's going to cost you multiple troops. And again, no matter how good your plan is, how good your budgeting is, how perfectly you figure everything out, everything is going to hinge simply on the roll of this one red die. And that really is the biggest warning I can give about XCOM, the board game, is the fact that the game can be utterly random at times because everything is basically hinging on the roll of an 8-sided die. You can have a perfect strategy where you have 3 soldiers on a mission. You only need to roll 1 success. You manage to hedge all your bets. All you need is 1 success, and the red die is going to roll on that one, your very first roll, and you've lost the mission. All 3 of your guys who are on that mission are completely destroyed. You could have 3 satellites on a space versus 1 single UFO, and all you need to do is just roll 1 single success, and this red die is going to blow you out of the water. Sure, you're going to get those great stories about how you had 1 sniper who was your total superhero who managed to completely save the entire base before it was destroyed just because you had the magic luck of the dice. Everything was going in your favor and everybody was able to help you. But again, that's not really a strategy game, and I think that's where this game may disappoint a lot of people because the pedigree and the heritage of this game is XCOM was a tactical strategy game that was extremely brutal, and we all love to reload our saves hundreds of times to get past those missions because it could be so utterly brutal at times. But unfortunately, in this game, the brutality is there, but it's not because of the strategy. It's all because of this little red die, and I think that's going to be the one of the biggest deciding factors for people on whether they're going to like XCOM the game, is just whether they want a really good strategy game, stay away, or if you want a really good social game where everybody's going to cheer you on, cheer you for your rolls, hoping that you're going to get the big roll to save the group, and everybody's going to have a lot of fun as a grand social enjoyment of a board game. Here's the other rub that I have against XCOM the board game. The simple fact that some of these jobs aren't always quite as exciting as some of the other jobs. This really is a 4-player game where every single person needs to be playing a role and they need to be watching the role very, very well. But it can feel like your role does not just have a lot to do to help contribute to the victory of the game. Some of the jobs feel like you're more of a band-aid role that are stopping things from happening versus watching the other roles who are helping you work towards the victory of the game. For example, you have the squad leader who is actually the only person who can bring about the victory of the game. So you know that as the squad leader, you know money's going to be thrown your way, because if money's not thrown your way, there's no way the team is going to win, because you need to be advancing towards the victory of the game. If you're not advancing towards the victory, you're not winning the game. You can't stagnate in this game. You're either working towards victory or you're basically losing. So you know this person's always going to be getting the money. The next person who's got a really cool job in the game is the science officer or the chief scientist, who's going to be handling out all the extra skill cards, which are going to be giving all the players new abilities. And this is really going to influence how much fun the other player is going to have, because if they're handing out skill cards not for your job, you're not going to get any more special abilities. And some of these jobs just don't have a lot to do, especially the central officer and also the commander. These are the 2 jobs that really felt like they could have been one single job, and it feels like they split them in an effort to make XCOM a 4-player game versus a 3-player game. Literally, as a central officer, you have 2 real jobs during the time phase. Putting UFOs on the board, no thought process there. You're simply looking at a screen, seeing the 2 dots where it's telling you to put those UFOs, and that's basically all you're doing. And then your other job that you have to do is you're figuring out, do you want to put 2 or 3 satellites on the board? And it's not really a decision of yours because you have the commander who's deciding where all the money is being thrown around the board. So it's not really much of a decision you have. And if you're not getting any of these really cool tech cards to give you any special abilities, you have one special ability during the time phase, moving UFOs around. Not really that exciting. So the only other problem I really have with the game, besides the randomness, is the fact that some of the jobs just aren't as exciting as some of the other jobs. If you get past the randomness, if you get past the fact that some of the jobs just aren't as exciting as others are, and again, get into that group social experience, you're going to have a heck of a lot more fun with XCOM, the board game. So is XCOM the board game a bad game? No. Is it a random dice fest baked into the theme? Yeah, sometimes it can be, but if you're looking for a random dice fest and you really love just rolling dice and having a lot of fun, you're actually going to have a heck of a lot of fun with XCOM the board game. So you need to go into this game with the right mindset. This is basically bringing back what was really made popular in 2014, the mechanic of the time game, which we saw made popular in Zombie 15. We also saw it made popular by Escape, the Curse of the Temple. It was a really popular theme. It was also went along with the bag building mechanic. Those were pretty much the two really big board gaming mechanics that came out in 2014 that were really new. And this is basically evolving the theme of a time game and bring that panic that can create. And if that's what you're looking for and you really do enjoy that experience, you're going to have a heck of a lot of fun with this game. Another thing that's really, really positive about this game is that they've done a really good job, thanks to the time mechanic where this timer is constantly counting down. This is one game that has almost killed the alpha gamer mentality. Sure, you can be yelling across the table that you need more money to do your role, and you need to tell this person they need to get out more science cards, because if they don't, you're not going to be able to do your things, and that this person needs to get out more satellites. But if you're the squad leader and you're busy yelling at everybody else and telling them exactly what they need to do, guess what? When your turn comes around and you need to start putting out the bad guys and you need to start figuring out exactly which squad mates you want to put on which missions, on defending the base or doing exactly what you need to do, guess who's been caught with their pants down because they have no idea what they're needing to do, and guess what timer is counting down very quickly to the point where you're about to lose the mission. Every time I do a review for a board game, it's always very important for me to cover two very important things. I'm a father of two board gamers. I like to talk about family friendliness for a board game. And we also know just how bad an experience some board games can be at multiple player counts. So I'd like to also discuss just how good a game plays at different player counts. Now the really nice thing about XCOM the board game is, like all co-op games, it can be played solo. And the really cool thing about this app is it does have an easy mode that if you go into the easy mode, you don't even have to worry about the timer anymore, which means you can have a heck of a lot of fun playing the game as a one-player game, not having to fight the timer, and you can actually enjoy the game as kind of a strategy game. And it's nice that it's going to play a little bit differently, and it's going to randomize things every time you play the game, and you actually get to enjoy the game as more of a solo experience. So if you're looking for a solo game, the game actually isn't too terrible. The only problem is that, as I stated, hopefully more than enough at this point, is that this game is really a social kind of game. The more players you add to this game, the more fun you're going to have, up to a point. And now I say up to the point for the simple fact that while every player has their own job of exactly what they need to be doing, the science officer needs to be working on getting these cards out to all the players so they all have extra abilities. The central officer needs to be staring at the app with their nose plugged into it and making sure that the timers aren't going out while they're yelling across the board that we have 5, 4, 3, 2 seconds left while they're throwing out the UFOs. And then you have the commander over there trying to figure out exactly how much money while they're yelling across the board, we're out of money, we're out of money, stop spending. While everybody else is begging for more money, and while you have the squad leader yelling across the board back at everybody saying, look, if I don't get the money to put the guys on the mission, we're not winning the game this turn because we're one panic level away from losing as the whole world goes into complete panic and we're going to lose. And that's the enjoyment the game creates, with that panic of forcing you to play and yell across the table in a good, fun way and have a lot of fun. My only negative, though, is that I really, really think the central officer and the commander can very easily be played by a single person, especially if you do what I do in my gaming room. Now, you can't see it, but over here to my left, I have a 48-inch screen TV where I plug the app into, so you really don't even need a central officer to play this game at all, because I have a large screen where all the players can actually see the game playing, which is really cool when you're playing the game, but it just goes to show you just how useless a central officer is, because you got a big screen with a very large timer with some pretty good sound effects, so you don't even need that job anymore, because basically anybody can throw a couple UFOs on the board and anybody can figure out a couple satellites. These two jobs could really easily be combined into one. And that's why I think that this game plays best as a 3-player game if you want a strategy, more of a game. But if you want more of a social experience, you want to play this as a 4-player game. Plays decent 1-player as a solo game, decent as a 2-player game, best as a 3 or 4, but if you want more of the strategy components, you definitely want this as a 3-player game. Now, when it comes to family friendliness, all co-op games are always going to be a little bit higher on the family friendliness. The only big judging factor you ever have to decide is if your kids are mature enough for the game theme to go ahead and enjoy it. There's games such as Zombicide. They're a co-op game, but you really don't want to be playing those with the younger kids. And then you have games such as XCOM, which actually have a much more, well, the theme about aliens taking over the Earth isn't family friendly, but it's not overly graphic or anything you have to worry about the kids seeing images that you're not wanting them to see. Now the game does, like I hope I've harped on more than enough, it's a panic-driven game where you need making split-second decisions, and the game is not going to give you a lot of time to make those decisions. So just for that reason alone, I'm going to say that the game is not that great for the younger players because they're not going to be able to make the split-second decisions. Of course, you could play the game on the easy mode, which is going to allow you to pause the game anytime you want and pause as long as you want. So the younger players who can't make those split-second decisions can actually play the game and enjoy it. But unfortunately, as an adult, you're going to start seeing the holes in the game because if this timer isn't forcing you down to quickly make those decisions, you see that the game is actually quite a bit on the easy side. If you actually play the easy game on the easy timer, where you're allowed to get the time to decide which technologies you want to go out, where you're allowed to take the time to figure out exactly which soldiers you want to go on which missions and exactly math out the possibilities, you see at this game, if you're allowed to pause all the time, is actually not that challenging. And that's when you start realizing how it does become much more of a press your luck game where everything really hinges on the roll of the dice. So yeah, if you want the younger players, you can pick the easy, you can put the pause button and have it available to you at all times. But I don't recommend that as the best way to play the game. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to say that the best way to play this game is definitely on the normal difficulty, where you're fighting that timer, where you don't have access to that pause button, which means you're definitely going to want to play this game with the older kids. I'd say probably about 10 and up. Good 4-player game for the family. And for the younger kids, if you want, you can give them some of the easier jobs to enjoy. If you're looking for a great social game, a great social experience where people are going to be cheering the roll of the dice and everybody's going to be yelling across the table, trying to have what they need to get their cards done. People are going to be yelling across the table that I need more money. Somebody's going to be yelling that if I don't get the cards we need in play, we're never going to win the game. Somebody's yelling about a timer counting down while somebody else is going, guys, I need 3 soldiers. If I get 3 soldiers, we're going to win the mission. We're going to win the game. All while a timer's counting down going beep, beep, beep. Then this is the game for you. If you're looking for a game that offers a lot of strategy, a lot of deep tactical decisions where you'll be able to math out your decisions, figure out exactly what you need to do to win the game, then you need to walk away from this game because it's absolutely not that kind of game. This is very much a social game, very much based on the environment it's creating, the tension it's creating, all based on this little app that's trying to make your life as difficult as possible. This has been another off-the-shelf board game review looking at XCOM the board game. If you have any questions, leave them in the YouTube comments below. I also have an email address set up now. It's the initials for off-the-shelf board game reviews, so otsbgr@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. Here's the other concern people are going to have with the game. This isn't really XCOM, the video game. I don't think it was ever... Godzilla Kitty Attack! You know when I'm videotaping. You know it. You know.